Very warm welcome to Amishakil 5858. I am Ahmed Shackle. Following are the latest news headlines which have been reported by American, European, Canadian, Asian, African and Australian news channels and all other news agencies. So please, let's go to the news.
Tonight, breaking news, a car slams into a massive crowd at a parade. Severe storms threaten record holiday travel. And the urgent manhunt for a former police chief convicted of murder. How police say he escaped from prison. First, that breaking news. Horrific video shows the moment a car rammed into scores of soccer fans during a victory parade. The crowd then smashing that car's windows. What authorities are now saying about the driver. Also tonight, storms are impacting millions heading home from the long holiday weekend. Lightning striking a packed plane. A tornado watch for parts of Texas tonight after multiple reports of twisters across several states. Dangerous weather set to sweep east. Our team is standing by to time it all out. The urgent search for a former police chief convicted of murder and rape. How investigators say he managed to escape from prison. The investigation tonight into an American man accused of plotting to firebomb the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv. What authorities say he had in his backpack. On this Memorial Day, President Trump honors the fallen at Arlington National Cemetery. In a rare rebuke, the president blasts Vladimir Putin, calling him absolutely crazy after Russia's biggest bombardment on Ukraine since the start of the war, and what Trump is now saying about a new tariff threat on the European Union. New reporting tonight in a shocking crypto kidnapping investigation in New York City. One man accused of kidnapping and torturing an Italian tourist for weeks. The second suspect set to surrender this week. Investigators say it was a twisted scheme to obtain the victim's Bitcoin password. The video seen around the world showing the moment French President Emmanuel Macron's wife appears to shove him in the face. How Macron is responding tonight. Billy Joel's wife speaks out after the music icon revealed a major health scare, forcing him to cancel all his concerts. And as the nation pauses to honor our fallen war heroes, a story of honor, hope, and heartbreak in Vietnam. After decades of searching, how one family hears their father's voice for the first time in decades. It's tonight's America Strong.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David.
Mike, joining us now is Julia Manchester, the Hill politics reporter. Julia, good to see you. Before we get started, I want to take a listen because Fox News Digital was on Harvard's campus talking to some of the students about everything that's going on. Take a listen.
There's a sort of feeling among both student and faculty to sort of resist the push that we're feeling from the current administration.
There's certainly a lot of political discrimination. If we were counting the conservative faculty here, you could count them all on one hand. I don't think Harvard should lose its tax exemptions. I think Harvard is one of the best things America does. It's one of the best things America has.
It mustn't lose its tax exemption. That would force it to close its doors.
Okay, so Harvard's fighting this all the way. They say the Trump administration doesn't sound like it's going to give up anytime soon. The administration is making a safety argument here. Where do you see this going?
Well, look, they're making a safety argument. You have the campus pushing back, adamantly denying any accusations of anti-Semitism or trying to tamp down on those a lot of those protests and some of those, anti-Semitic actions we saw coming out of those protests. But I think this really ends up in the courts, Alicia. We are going to see this battle, I think, drawn on, in the long run. Harvard, unlike some of the other Ivy Leagues, like Columbia University, for example, has taken the road of ultimate resistance. They have, they're essentially showing they are not going to bow down to President Trump in this battle. So I think this continues to be a public relations and legal battle going forward.
Yeah, the president really going after them where it hurts when it comes to money. Here is the president.
Billions of dollars has been paid to Harvard. How ridiculous is that? Billions. And they have $52 billion as an endowment. They have $52 billion. And this country's paying billions and billions of dollars and then gives student loans and have to pay back the loans. So Harvard's going to have to change its ways.
So, Juliet, now the president is talking about diverting $3 billion in grant money to trade schools, which is an interesting idea in and of itself. However, I'm just wondering, is that under the purview of the Oval Office, or is it something that Congress takes care of?
Well, I think we'll find that out. I think once again, this goes to the questions about, the legality of all of these moves. And we haven't really been in a situation like this where you have a president sort of trying to divert these funds. We have to remember that Harvard is, of course, a private university. So that's where
Tonight, the nightmare at a championship parade when a driver plows into a massive crowd. The alarming video showing a minivan striking multiple pedestrians. The driver careening down a street full of soccer fans at a championship parade. That driver under arrest. What authorities are saying tonight. President Trump's growing showdown with Harvard threatening to revoke $3 billion in grants and give it to trade schools instead. Plus the new delay on his EU tariffs and the president's rebuke of Vladimir Putin, calling him absolutely crazy after Russia's latest attacks on Ukraine. The brazen prison escape, how a former police chief and convicted murderer disguised himself in order to break out the urgent manhunt. The new video of a tourist racing to find police after escaping the apartment of a crypto millionaire who allegedly kidnapped him and tortured him to get his password. Summer travel deals, how you can score major savings, including the lowest airfares in years. The battle of the blockbusters Lilo and Stitch versus Mission Impossible, who came out on top. And saluting America's fallen, a Memorial Day homecoming 80 years in the making.
This is NBC Nightly News. From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jerika Duncan, in for Maurice Dubois and John Dickerson. We begin with President Trump's growing frustration with a war he repeatedly said he could end within 24 hours. Overnight, Russia launched what Ukraine calls the largest wave of drones since the war started more than 3 years ago. The president fumed on social media that Russian leader Vladimir Putin has gone absolutely crazy, an assessment a spokesman for Putin dismissed as, quote, emotional overload. President Trump says he is now considering more sanctions on Russia in response to the ongoing attacks. Well, James Inman leads us off tonight from the White House. Good evening. I'm Laura Barone-Lopez. Jeff Bennett and Amna Navaz are away. On the News Hour tonight, Russia escalates its assault on Ukraine, drawing criticism from President Trump and complicating U.S. efforts to broker a peace deal. We hear from a handful of Democratic candidates who are launching primary bids in hopes of charting a new path forward for a party in disarray. And major charity organizations face an uncertain future after the Trump administration halted foreign aid.
We're going to have to start from scratch. And that, I hope that the funding is resumed in full tomorrow, but even if it were, this damage is done.
The King and Queen in Canada on this Monday night. The fanfare and anticipation on this first visit by King Charles as monarch.
I was excited when I realized I was going to skip school for the King.
The message he's sending and how he's subtly affirming Canada's sovereignty as more Canadians support the monarchy.
It's so needed right now.
While the reception to the royals has recovered. Plus a deadly strike on a school in Gaza sheltering civilians as Israel's government comes under fire from allies. Alberta's government seeks to ban some books from school libraries. What's driving the new policy?
National Donna Freezy.
At an uncertain time in Canada's history, in walks the King. The symbolism of this two-day visit by King Charles and Queen Camilla is unmistakable. This is the true north, strong and free, and King Charles, as Canada's head of state, is here to reinforce that. Invited by newly elected Prime Minister Mark Carney, the King will deliver the speech from the throne tomorrow, opening a new session of Parliament. Good evening and thanks for joining us. King Charles wields soft power. He's not expected to publicly weigh in on President Trump's threats to Canada. As Mackenzie Gray reports, his presence alone sends a strong message.
A Canadian ovation that the royals have become accustomed to. Charles' 20th visit to Canada saw hundreds welcoming him to Ottawa, but it's his first as the King of Canada. And what's more Canadian than a road hockey game? Charles dropping the ceremonial puck alongside former Ottawa Senator Chris Phillips and Desiree Scott, a member of the women's national soccer team. For the kids who showcased our national pastime, today wasn't just about the hockey.
I was excited when I realized I was going to skip school for the king. I was actually really excited.
Queen Camilla joining the king while touring a local farmer's market, including the Syrian bakery. Falafel and other treats made in Ottawa since 2016 when the Altoui family came to Canada as refugees.
Great day today for me, guys. I'm so happy. We have little stress. I don't know why, but I'm okay with my family here.
The Royals' 24-hour whirlwind trip comes at the request of the Prime Minister.
This is Sky News Breakfast. Horror at Liverpool's victory parade. A car ploughs into a crowd of football fans here in the city centre. 4 children are among the dozens injured in Liverpool after a car drove into the crowd at yesterday's Premier League victory parade. Merseyside police say they're not treating the incident as terrorism following the arrest of a 53-year-old man at the scene.
We are not currently looking for anyone else in relation to it. The incident is not being treated as terrorism.
Witnesses say the driver put his foot down as crowds tried to stop the car from hitting any more fans.
We heard all beeping and screaming, and when we looked up, there was a black people carrier driving straight towards us.
And we'll hear from the government later on. We'll be joined by the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. Well, good morning. There was horror here at Liverpool's Premier League victory day.
Today, survivors of Western Australia's stolen generations to be compensated by the state government.
Today we take small steps towards righting an historic wrong.
A woman appears in a Queensland court charged with the murder of her 3-year-old child. More children killed in Israeli attacks on Gaza as international pressure builds on the Netanyahu government to let more aid in. A day of joy shattered in Liverpool after a car ploughs into a crowd celebrating the club's Premier League title. And more relief payments announced as flood-affected residents in New South Wales continue the cleanup. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Rose Childs. The West Australian government has...
Next, the biggest names are on France 24. Liberté, égalité, actualité.
Hello and a very warm welcome if you're just joining us. You're watching Daybreak here on France 24. These are the headlines. Lifting the limits on missiles given to Kyiv, Germany's chancellor says the restrictions on range has been scrapped as Russia intensifies its assault on Ukraine. A number of towns along the border in the Sumy region now said to have been taken over by Russian forces. We'll be crossing live to Kyiv in this edition. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation takes over the distribution of aid in Gaza despite objections from the UN and other NGOs that say it's not allowed to work independently and is rather controlled by Israel. Only teaspoons of aid being allowed in so far after a full blockade for months left hundreds of thousands of people there starving. And planning to bring back certain pesticides is still being debated here in France, a bill that would allow some toxic chemicals to be used. Currently being examined, farmers say they're a necessary evil and without them they simply can't grow enough crops to sustain supplies. Opponents say they're dangerous substances that we're spreading around.
This Asia Now.
It's 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi, and 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Rani Saptani. At this hour, ASEAN leaders broadening alliances amid U.S. trade tensions. The bloc is holding its first trilateral summit with China and Gulf states to bolster economic partnerships. Dozens injured after a car plowed into crowds at Liverpool's Premier League victory parade. Police rule out terrorism, calling this an isolated incident. And ceasefire confusion. Palestinian officials say Hamas have agreed to a new truce, but Israel and the U.S. deny any deal has been made.
Horror on the streets of Liverpool. A car ploughs into the packed crowds that were here for the Premier League victory parade.
Almost 50 people have been injured. Ellie and Emily here on breakfast.
Horror on the streets of Liverpool. A car ploughs into the packed crowds that were here for the Premier League victory parade.
Almost 50 people have been injured, including 4 children.
And yes, police have arrested a 53-year-old white British man from the Liverpool area at the scene. Merseyside police gave this update late last night.
Believe this to be an isolated incident, and we are not currently looking for anyone else in relation to it. The incident is not being treated as terrorism.
Well, questions have now been asked from a community waking up this morning in shock and demanding answers.
And this road should never have ever been left open. It was inevitable this was going to happen, wasn't it?
Well, the police say that there were robust traffic management measures in place, and that, of course, is because many people are asking how on earth this vehicle was able to get into the footprint of the parade itself.
The North West Ambulance Service deployed vast resources at the scene last night, and ambulances have taken 27 people to hospital following the incident.
And the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, praises the remarkable bravery of the emergency services following what he describes as the terrible events in Liverpool last night. Well, there we go. 1 minute past the hour of 7 o'clock. That is what we are concentrating on today. Good morning from me, Eamon Holmes.
And from me, Emily Carver.
And from me, Ellie Costello, live in Liverpool, a city waking up in shock. This is a special edition of GB News Breakfast.
Africa News. The news.
It is the end of a political exile that started more than a year ago. Former President of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Joseph Kabila, has arrived in Goma in the east of the country. The round-the-backed M23 rebels who control the capital of North Kivu since January arrival would change anything, especially because nothing had changed when he was president. His arrival doesn't mean we can expect change now, even though he served as president. He has been president for 18 years, and we have seen few results, some of them positive and other negative. For that, I welcome him for the development of the country. Kabila arrives to Goma in a moment of increased political and security tensions. The RC President Felix Tshisekedi has long accused his predecessor of supporting the M23 and the Congo River Alliance rebels. In Goma, people wonder about Kabila's motives. If he has come to a place where there is fighting, maybe he has come to unite with us, the children of Goma, who live in the middle of the war. We have suffered too much because of the war. Maybe his presence can change things and put an end to the conflict. Kabila returns to the DRC just 3 days after he delivered a rare address broadcast on YouTube. In his speech, the former head of state had announced his intention to travel to Goma. For some analysts, Kabila's return to open a new chapter in the DRC's current political and security crisis. It's definitely a political counterattack for him to come to Goma, and as you know, he is an unfathomable and impenetrable politician. So far, it's tricky to know what stance he's going to take, but I think time will reveal sufficient information about his next decisions. Joseph Kabila remains on the Congolese authorities' radar. The Senate lifted his parliamentary immunity on Thursday, paving the way for potential judicial proceedings.
Foreign students at Harvard University are in turmoil after the Trump administration moved to block the school from enrolling non-citizens. The move has left hundreds of students in limbo, unsure of their futures in the US.
I'm going to lose dreams, hopes, and 20 years of my life coming to Harvard. And I'm not exaggerating, I planned for it for 15 years. I did 2 masters. I did 1 master in Spain, another master degree in England, and then I came to Harvard. So I would lose years of my life, which is the biggest thing. Secondly, of course, I will lose a degree. That it's my 6th year. I worked here for 6 years. So this is not a small thing. And most importantly, that my wife is on J2 visa. She came here with me. I'm expecting a baby. So if this happens, and my wife in a month from now, she will not be able to travel. So this is absolutely disastrous.
The decision has caused stress for many students. While a judge has temporarily blocked the policy, its future remains uncertain.
We're all panicking. We're all overwhelmed. Time of uncertainty. Literally, like it's I've never experienced it before.
Harvard officials have vowed to keep fighting the policy in court. For students like Akif, the outcome could shape not just their education, but their lives.
Naomi Ohene Oti from Ghana.
When hard work pays off, Ohene Oti has won the 2025 Astor Guardians Global Nursing Award for her pioneering work in cancer care and nurse training. She was selected from 100,000 applicants across 199 countries.
This is not just my victory, it is a recognition of the resilience, compassion, and leadership of nurses across Ghana, Africa, and the world. Over 2 decades ago, I began my nursing journey with a simple mission: to ease pain, bring hope, and walk alongside those battling cancer. In sub-Saharan Africa, I have witnessed firsthand the inequities in cancer care, especially in the resourced communities. But I've also seen the immense potential of nurses to lead transformative change.
As head of nursing at Kolebu's Oncology Center in Accra, Ohene helped launch training programs. She was also part of the team that developed Ghana's postgraduate oncology nursing curriculum in 2015. Her award comes amid global calls to elevate the profession.
We need urgent, sustained investments in nursing education, jobs, leadership, and working conditions, informed by data, driven by equity, and inspired by the courage and compassion of nurses. My congratulations to the nurses being recognized today.
This year's award cycle saw a 28% increase in nursing applications over the last year.
Thank you very much for giving time to Amir Shackle 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Have a good life. Bye-bye.